She will ask excellent questions, I'm sure.
And right now, we can see Secretary of Defense Hegseth, General Kane taking the podium.
And we're back.
Back from NATO.
Continuing with the drama.
From my battle buddy, so it's good to see him this morning. Good to see you, Mr. Chairman.
Pete Hegseth.
Where there was a historic outcome. I want to start with that real quick.
Giving a press conference on
there's so
NATO.
much news, so many things happening that oftentimes big, momentous moments get missed.
Let's
what
listen
President
to
Trump
this spin.
accomplished in NATO yesterday was game-changing and historic.
There you go.
A shift in burden sharing to European responsibility in NATO that most would have said was impossible at the beginning of his term. He said NATO needs to pay up. They started in the first term, and here in his second term, we've accelerated that. 32 NATO countries committed to spending 5% of their GDP on defense, on actually investing in the NATO alliance. So I hope with all the ink spilled, all of your outlets find the time to properly recognize this historic change in continental security that other presidents tried to do, other presidents talked about. President Trump accomplished it.
It's not historic change.
You see, we're here this morning because
it's historic extortion.
In hunting for scandals all the time, in trying to find wedges and spin stories, this press corps and the press corps miss historic moments. You miss historic moments like 5% at NATO, which when you hear, I was in the closed door briefing, I wish there could have been cameras in there. When you heard the prime ministers and presidents of other countries, to a man and to a woman, looking at President Trump and saying, this never could have happened. Never would have happened. It seemed impossible 5 years ago, 2 years ago, 8 years ago. But here we are because of your leadership. If you ask them the question, I bet they'd say the same thing. But searching for scandals, you miss historic moments, like recruiting at the Pentagon. Historic levels in the Army, the Air Force, and the Navy. Yeah, maybe there'll be a little mention here or there, but because it was under President Trump's leadership, because Americans are responding to him as commander-in-chief, the press corps doesn't want to write about it.
Show the numbers.
Or bring us to the topic of the moment.
Show the numbers.
Highly successful
comparison
strikes in Iran. Let me read the
recruits
bottom line here.
From
President Trump
past to now.
Directed the most complex and secretive military operation in history. And it was a resounding success, resulting in a ceasefire agreement
bigger than Bin Laden
of the 12-day war. There's been a lot of discussion.
Keep in mind, guys,
step back for a second.
Everything Trump is doing, he's trying to outdo
to end the war.
Barack Obama and undo
choose your word,
anything that he accomplished.
Destroying Iran's nuclear capabilities.
If y'all not understanding that, we're missing the whole point.
Have been provided because whether it's fake news, CNN, MSNBC, or the New York Times, there's been fawning coverage.
This is America taking their country
back. I had a
back.
chance to read it. Every outlet has breathlessly reported on a preliminary assessment.
And this is our Secretary of Defense.
I'm looking at it right now. Again, it was preliminary, a day and a half after the actual strike, when it admits itself in writing that it requires weeks to accumulate the necessary data to make such an assessment preliminary. It points out that it's not been coordinated with the intelligence community at all. There's low confidence in this particular report. It says in the report there are gaps in the information. It says in the report multiple linchpin assumptions are what this assessment. A linchpin assumption, you know what that is? That means your entire premise is predicated on a linchpin. If you're wrong, everything else is wrong. And yet, still, this report acknowledges it's likely severe damage. Again, this is preliminary, but leaked because someone had an agenda to try to muddy the waters and make it look like this historic strike wasn't successful.
Again, I can have severe damage to my car,
particulars for you,
but my car is still operational.
But here's what other folks are saying.
It may look bad,
the DIA that put that report
cosmetic,
says that this is a preliminary low-confidence report and will continue to be
but the vehicle is still
as additional
operational.
Intelligence becomes available. How about the Israeli Atomic
That's what
Energy
Iran
Commission?
nuclear
The devastating U.S. strikes on Fordo
program
destroyed the
is right
site's
now.
critical
It's
infrastructure
damaged,
and rendered the enrichment facility
but it's operational.
inoperable.
Where's the uranium?
These quotes made their way into the New York Times or the Washington Post, MSNBC.
It's the most
CNN?
important question.
Any of these quotes? How about this
Where's
one?
the 900
From
pounds
the
of
UN,
uranium?
United Nations. No friend of the United States, or certainly Israel often. Here's the head of the UN
And until that
Atomic
question is
Energy
answered.
Agency this morning, Rafael Grossi. U.S. and Israeli
This shit
strikes
is all
caused
moot.
enormous damage to Iran's nuclear sites. Don't take my word for it. How about the IDF's chief of staff? I can say here that the assessment is that we significantly damaged the nuclear program, setting it back by years. I repeat, years. The Iranian foreign minister, the spokesman, our nuclear installations have been badly damaged, that's for sure. I'm sure that's an understatement. John Ratcliffe, the director of the CIA, putting out a statement just last night. CIA can confirm that a body of credible intelligence indicates Iran's nuclear program has been severely damaged by recent targeted strikes. This includes new intelligence from a historically reliable, very different than preliminary assessment with low confidence. He's saying historically reliable and accurate source and method that several key Iranian nuclear facilities were destroyed and would have to be rebuilt over the course of years.
Yeah, several.
CIA continues to collect
But where were they?
reliably
It wasn't
sourced
far though.
information to keep appropriate decision makers fully informed. How about DNI Tulsi Gabbard yesterday? She writes, and I quote, "New intelligence confirms what POTUS has stated numerous times. Iran's nuclear facilities have been destroyed." Institute for Science and International Security President David Albright, overall Israel and U.S. attacks have effectively destroyed Iran's centrifuge.
But none of these
enrichment
people have been on the
program.
ground.
Time and time again, I can go down the list. Those that understand, those that see, those that do proper assessments recognize that what the United States military did was historic. And again, before I pass it to the chairman, because you, and I mean specifically you, the press, specifically you, the press corps, because you cheer against Trump so hard, it's in your DNA and in your blood to cheer against Trump, because you want him not to be successful so bad, you have to cheer against the efficacy of these strikes. You have to hope maybe they weren't effective. Maybe the way the Trump administration has represented them isn't true. So let's take half-truths, spun information, leaked information, and then spin it. Spin it in every way we can to try to cause doubt, and manipulate the public mind over whether or not our brave pilots were successful. How many stories have been written about how hard it is to
You see, they're trying to point this to them.
Has MSNBC done that story? Has Fox? Have we done this story, how hard that is?
The pilots.
Have we done it 2 or 3 times? So that American people understand how difficult it is to shoot
the pilots carried out their
an
mission.
F-15 or 16 or F-22 or F-35. Or what it's like to man a Patriot battery.
But what's the damage
How hard it is
assessment?
to refuel midair. Giving the American people an understanding of how complex
this
and
is spin.
sophisticated this mission really was.
This is deflection.
There are so many aspects of what our brave men and women did that because of the hatred of this press corps are undermined because people are trying to leak and spin that it wasn't successful. It's irresponsible. And folks in this room are privy to that information because of the proximity here in the Pentagon. It's an important responsibility. And time again, classified information is leaked or peddled for political purposes to try to make the president look bad. And what's really happening is you're undermining the success of incredible B-2 pilots,
Iran is sitting right now
and incredible refuelers, and
in the facility that they already had planned
set back a nuclear program
as
in
a
ways that other
backup
presidents would have dreamed.
in case this would
How
happen.
about we celebrate that?
With their 900
How about we talk
pounds
about how
of
special
enriched
America
uranium,
is, that we have these capabilities.
with their centrifuges,
I think it's too much to
with
ask,
their
unfortunately, for
knowledge.
fake news. So we're used to that. But
And
we
this
also have an
time,
opportunity to stand
you're
at the
gonna
podium
eat all
and
of
read
those
the
words.
truth of what's really happening. And the reality is, you want to call it destroyed, you want to call it defeated, you want to call it obliterated. Choose your word. This was a historically successful attack. We should celebrate it as Americans, and it gives us a chance to have peace, chance to have a deal, and an opportunity to prevent a nuclear Iran, which is something President Trump talked about for 20 years.
Yeah, you
and no
just
other
sped
presidents
up
had the courage to actually do.
a nuclear
So
Iran.
with that, I want to hand it over to the chairman of the Joint
They
Chiefs.
about to
They've
go
done technical
underground.
analysis
They about
on
to
this, not just
pull
on the
back
strike,
from
but
all
also
the
our Patriot
inspectors,
defenders on LUD.
all
Finish it, Tim, I'll
the
hand it over to you.
International
Thank you,
Atomic
Mr.
Energy
Secretary, and
Association
good
or
morning,
agency,
and all of you.
whatever the fuck that
Thank
is.
you for being here.
That's
As
done.
a follow-up to my comments on Sunday's press
They
conference,
truly about to
I
go
wanted to give you a
underground.
few updates this morning on something I'm honored to do as a
But in the
chairman, and
meantime,
that's a
America's
chance to
gonna
get
pay
to
for
talk
it.
about some of our service
Here.
members and the incredible things
Not at the
that
bases
they do
over
on
across
behalf
seas.
of our
Here,
nation. And
on
I
American
apologize
soil.
ahead of time for the length and the detail. Today,
With
I'm gonna brief on a
activated
couple
terrorists.
things. First, I'm going to talk
So,
about our air defenders at
anyway.
Al-Udeid in Qatar and their actions on Monday. Then I'm going to walk you through a little bit about the academics that went into the attack against Fordo, the massive ordnance penetrator weapon, and we're going to show a video that highlights the effects that weapon has. Of course, nobody was down inside the target, so we don't have video from the target. First, on Monday, as the president has stated, on Monday morning we began to receive indications and warnings that Iran intended to attack U.S. bases in the region. That morning, building on the work that CENTCOM Commander Eric
Donald
Kurilla
Trump
had
told
done,
him it was
and on
okay.
the orders of the president, Al-Udeid Air Base in Qatar and around the region, we assumed a minimum force posture. Most folks had moved off the base to extend the security perimeter out away from what we assessed might be a target zone.
Yeah, no.
Except
You
for
moving
very
away
few Army soldiers at Al-Udeid.
because Trump told him it was
At
okay to
that
go
point,
ahead and
only
attack the
2
base.
Patriot batteries remained on base. Roughly 44 American soldiers responsible for defending the entire base, to include CENTCOM's
Now, this cat
forward
just talked about
headquarters
spin.
in the Middle East, an entire air base, and all the U.S. forces
And here they
there.
are spinning this
The
shit.
oldest soldier was a 28-year-old captain. The youngest was a 21-year-old private who'd been in the military for less than 2 years. So let's put ourselves out there for a second. Imagine you're that young first lieutenant, you're 25 or 26 years old, and you've been assigned as the tactical director inside the command and control element. You, at that age, are the sole person responsible to defend this base. Listening next to you is
How's he
your
ready for
early
that
warning
at
operator
21?
whose job is to notify you of imminent attack. There's 5 people inside a
How's he
vehicle
prepared for that?
and 5 people outside of a vehicle around these, a total of, as I said, 44. By the way, you've sat in the Middle East for years, deployed over and over again, extended multiple times, always being prepared, but
You just said he
unsure
was
of
just
when that particular
joined the
day
military
will
2
come,
years ago.
that you must execute your mission and not fail.
How's he
at
been there for
doing it.
years,
In
then?
this case, these Patriot crews were deployed from Korea and Japan as part of our U.S. forces there to ensure that we had the most capable missiles in the CENTCOM area of responsibility. As the day continues, you start to hear more and more chatter in the information space about a pending attack. And as the sun starts to set in the west, you get orders from your higher headquarters to make sure that your missile batteries are pointed to the north. There are just a few other teammates. It's hot, you're getting nervous, and you expect an attack. Outside of those Patriot vehicles, your hot crew, which is 1 NCO and
You see,
4 additional
this
soldiers,
is trying to take
turns a key
away
and relinquishes control of those missiles to that young lieutenant inside
from the
vehicle.
actual
And
decision
you wait.
to
You
do the
know
mission
that you're going to have approximately
and point to the
2
men
minutes,
and women,
120
I'm assuming,
seconds
hopefully
to
some
either
women,
succeed
that carried
or
out the
fail.
mission.
And then at approximately 12:30 p.m.
So they're
on
saying
Monday,
by you
that's
criticizing Trump, you
7:30
criticizing the
p.m.
troops.
in Qatar, as the sun sets in the west, Iran attacks.
So this
As
is
the
an attempt
targets were detected, round after round
to
of
put
Patriot missiles are
the
ejected from their
focus
canisters
on
by an initial launch charge.
the pilots
Then the main solid rocket motor ignites.
and take away
You
the
can
focus
feel
from
this
Donald
in your
Trump.
body if you've ever been around a Patriot taking a shot. And round after round goes out and guides against those missiles coming inbound. We believe that this is the largest single Patriot engagement in U.S. military history, and we were joined in this engagement by the Qatari Patriot crews. I'm not going to tell you how many rounds were shot, but it was a bunch because of classified purposes. And we're aware that there's reports of something getting through. What we do know is there was a lot of metal flying around. Between attacking missiles being hit by Patriots, boosters from attacking missiles being hit by Patriots, the Patriots themselves flying around, and the debris from those Patriots hitting the ground, there was a lot of metal flying around. And yet our U.S. air defenders had only seconds to make complex decisions with strategic impact. These awesome humans, along with their Qatari brothers and sisters in arms,
they are
stood
awesome
between
humans.
a salvo of Iranian
And nobody is
missiles
taking
and the
anything
safety
away
of
from
Al
what they
Udeid.
did.
They are the unsung heroes of the 21st century
But they're
United
not
States Army.
the
And I know a
focus
lot of you have seen the videos online
of this
and the
issue.
excitement as those Patriots departed their launchers and
The
went
fact
up and
that the
got
mission
it.
was
This really demonstrates the combat
assigned
capability and capacity of our Army air defenders. Simply stated, they absolutely crushed it. If you flip this over, thanks. Let me next move to a walkthrough of the GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator weapon and share a little bit about the planners who did this and their work on the weapon. First, let me set the stage for you.
Yeah, that's it.
There's an organization in the U.S. called the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, DTRA. DTRA does a lot of things for our nation, but DTRA is the world's leading expert on deeply buried underground targets. In 2009, a defense threat reduction
come on.
agency officer was brought into a vault at an undisclosed location and briefed on something going on in Iran. For security purposes, I'm not going to share his name. He was shown some photos and some highly classified intelligence of what looked like a major construction project in the mountains of Iran. He was tasked to study this facility, work with the intelligence community to understand it, and he was soon joined by an additional teammate. For more than 15 years, this officer and his teammate lived and breathed this single target, Fordo, a critical element of Iran's covert nuclear weapons program. He studied the geology. He watched the Iranians dig it out. He watched the construction, the weather, the discard material, the geology, the construction materials, where the materials came from. He looked at the vent shaft, the exhaust shaft, the electrical systems, the environmental control systems, every nook, every crater, every piece of equipment going in and every piece of equipment going out. They literally dreamed about this target at night when they slept. They thought about it driving back and forth to work, and they knew from the very first days what this was for. You do not build a multi-layered underground bunker complex with centrifuges and other equipment in a mountain for any peaceful purpose. They weren't able to discuss this with their family, their wives, their kids, their friends, but they just kept grinding it out. And along the way, they realized we did not have a weapon that could adequately strike and kill this target. So they began a journey to work with industry and other tacticians to develop the GBU-57. They tested it over and over again, tried different options, tried more after that. They accomplished hundreds of test shots and dropped many full-scale weapons against extremely realistic targets for a single purpose: kill this target at the time and place of our nation's choosing. And then, on a day in June of 2025, more than 15 years after they started their life's work, the phone rang and the President of the United States ordered the B-2 force that you've supported to go strike and kill this target. Yesterday, I had the incredible honor and privilege of spending time with these two Defense Threat Reduction Agency officers who've given so much. One of them said, quote, "I can't even get my head around this. My heart is so filled with the pride of being a part of this team. I am so honored to be a part of this." To you
man?
both, thank you.
Show the
and
damage.
Thank you to your families. Operation Midnight Hammer was the culmination of those 15 years of incredible work. The air crews, the tanker crews, the weapons crews that built the weapons, the load crews that loaded it. Before I run through this video today, I want to talk a little bit about weaponeering and what goes into an attack. Weaponeering is the science of evaluating a target. I mentioned all of those factors before that these two DTRA officers had thought about. Ultimately, weaponeering is determining the right weapon and fuse combination to achieve the desired effects and maximum destruction against a target. In the case of Fordo, the DTRA team understood with a high degree of confidence the elements of the target required to kill its functions, and the weapons were designed, planned, and delivered to ensure that they achieve the effects in the mission space. By the way, in the beginning of its development, we had so many PhDs working on the MOP program, doing modeling and simulation, that we were quietly and in a secret way the biggest users of supercomputer hours within the United States of America. So let me talk about the graphic a little bit. And the GBU-57, which all of you I know is a 30,000 pound weapon dropped only by the B-2. It's comprised of steel, explosive, and a fuse, programmed bespokely each weapon to achieve a particular effect inside the target. Each weapon had a unique desired impact angle, arrival, final heading, and a fuse setting. The fuse is effectively what tells the bomb when to function. A longer delay in a fuse, the deeper the weapon will penetrate and drive into the target. So on Fordo, in June of 2008, you can see these three holes. Depicted here is the main exhaust shaft with 2 additional ventilation shafts on either side. The United States decided to strike these 2 ventilation shafts, as seen here on the main graphic, as the primary point of entry into the mission space. In the days preceding the attack against Fordo, the Iranians attempted to cover the shafts with concrete to try to prevent an attack. I won't share the specific dimensions of the concrete cap, but you should know that we know what the dimensions of those concrete caps were. The planners had to account for this. They accounted for everything. The cap was forcibly removed by the first weapon, and the main shaft was uncovered. Weapons 2, 3, 4, 5 were tasked to enter the main shaft, move down into the complex at greater than 1,000 feet per second, and explode in the mission space. Weapon number 6 was designed on each side, so there were 6 on each side. Weapons number 6 was designed as a flex weapon to allow us to cover if one of the preceding jets or one of the preceding weapons did not work. The video I'm about to show you is a culmination of over 15 years of development and testing. As I said, hundreds of test shots on various models. This is one weapon. So if you take a view of this as 5 additionals, you'll get a sense of what this looks like. Hopefully you can see it and there's not too much reflection. Tom runs our videos out there. We'll run it at full speed so you can see it and then go back through it. Go ahead, Tom. Keep it going for a minute. You'll see inside the mission space. Unlike a normal surface bomb, you won't see an impact crater. because they're designed to deeply bury and then function. I know there's been a lot of questions about that. All 6 weapons at each vent at Fordo went exactly where they were intended to go. A bomb has 3 effects that causes damage: blast, fragmentation, and overpressure. In this case, the primary kill mechanism in the mission space was a mix of overpressure and blast, ripping through the open tunnels and destroying critical hardware. The majority of the damage we assessed based on our extensive modeling was a blast layer combined with the impulse extending from the shock. Imagine what this looks like 6 times over. A point that I want to make here: the Joint Force does not do BDA. By design, we don't grade our own homework. The intelligence community does. But here's what we know following the attacks and the strikes on Fordo. First, that the weapons were built, tested, and loaded properly. 2, the weapons were released on speed and on parameters. 3, the weapons all guided to their intended targets and to their intended aim points. 4, the weapons functioned as designed, meaning they exploded. We know this through other means, intelligence means that we have, that were visibly, we were visibly able to see them. And we know that the trailing jets saw the first weapons function, and the pilots stated, quote, "This was the brightest explosion that I've ever seen. It literally looked like daylight." Let me now turn to the bomber crews themselves, give you a few details about them. The crews that attacked Fordo were from the active duty Air Force and the Missouri Air National Guard.
Salute
the crews
to you, young
ranked
man.
from captain to colonel, and most were graduates of the Air Force Weapons School headquartered at Nellis Air Force Base
But I
in
doubt
Nevada.
there were any women
I will
involved.
state for the record that there is no beach volleyball or football at the Air Force Weapons School. There were male and female aviators on this mission.
Okay.
And a crew member told me when I talked to them on video the other day that this felt like the Super Bowl, the thousands of scientists, airmen, and maintainers all coming together. One last story about people. When the crews went to work on Friday, they kissed their loved ones goodbye, not knowing when or if they'd be home. Late on Saturday night, their families became aware of what was happening. And on Sunday, when those jets returned from Whiteman, their families were there. Flags flying and tears flowing. I have chills literally talking about this. The jets rejoined into a formation of 4 airplanes followed by a formation of 3 and came up overhead Whiteman, proudly in the traffic pattern, pitching out to land right over the base.
See,
and landing
this is painting the picture
of their families who sacrificed
American.
and served right alongside.
You know, everything in
family
America is
members.
based on the
Like
story,
I said, there were
right?
a lot of flags and a lot of tears. One
Shakespearean
commander told me
shit.
this is
Dramatic.
a moment in the lives of our families that they will never forget. That, my friends, is what America's Joint Force does. We think, we develop, we train, we rehearse, we test, we evaluate every single day. And when the call comes to deliver, we do so. I could not be more proud standing up here today of our Joint Force. I'm filled with gratitude that I get to tell their story. And as we stand here right now, our forces remain on a high state of readiness in the region, prepared to defend themselves.
It's not gonna
And
matter.
one last thing. Our
What's gonna happen
adversaries
with them here
around the world
on American
should
soil?
know that there are other DTRA team members out there studying targets for the same amount of time, and will continue to do so. Thank you very much. I apologize for the length. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just thank you, by the way, for that extensive work to lay down. I mean, even, do you have that laser pointer? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, squaring me away as always. I mean, even in just the public reporting, if you see the post-strike shaft with the 3 holes, the vast majority, and fairly so, the vast majority of speculation
He's got to sell it,
was
man.
the 3 strike
He's
points.
got to sell it.
When in actuality, what you realize is these are the vents, these are the caps. The first munition took the cap off, and the other 5 went down the center hole, which, if you're planning the target, you would want it to be the direct one going to the bottom. These are the types of things that go into the planning for a strike that the Pentagon would not expect the press corps or the American people to initially understand. So laying this information out is helpful. But it's also why we ask for a beat, for a moment, for a day or two,
All right.
the opportunity to tell
Might
that
come
story.
back.
Because as the chairman said, these